Hi, David.
Hi, Sarah.
I want to talk about something which it feels like we probably should have talked about right from the very beginning because we mention it all the time, and that is energy. I think it would be really interesting to explore more about what is energy actually, and then we're going to look at some of the language that people bring to energy. We hear about chakras and energy centers and energy blockages and flow and all of these things. And sometimes when you use those words, I hear like that what you're experiencing is different from what most people are experiencing, and probably
Yeah.
I'm experiencing something different as well. So I think we could start with a big question, which is, what is energy?
I mean,
Is that okay?
well, uh, most people are, of course, have some familiarity of energy, and of course, they just think it's like getting zapped, I think, sometimes. But um, when I use energy, I have to make sure that there's an actual flow in the energy so that the energy has a full cycle and it has to move completely around the body in it has to also so we get one cycle which would be feminine, one cycle would be masculine, and we also need to make sure that the energy is also positive and negative, a bit like a so I guess just like a when we're got to use a generator, yeah, because what we end up doing is then as we use all those masculine, feminine, feminine, masculine, and we use negative and positive, we make sure that the charges then become neutral so that the negative isn't over negative and the positive isn't over positive, so that as we talked before, if we have too much over negative energy, which we're a little bit used to, that's when we become really, really over forceful. And that's when it's almost like you're trying to shut someone down or fully force someone. But then over positive in the other one is the concept that everyone's not used to. And that's the one where everybody is sort of trying to manipulate everybody just more coercively. Um, but
So I'd like to
when
take,
we look at,
can I
so when
take
we
it
look
out a
at,
bit, first of all, out a bit
yeah,
further, and then we can come back into this
yeah,
because this is
no,
so important. Like I'm going to say how I think of what is energy. And
yep,
then it would be really interesting to hear you respond to that. And then, because first of all, I think it needs to be placed in the context of what is energy altogether, because we throw the word energy around, and it's really interesting. If you look it up on the internet, you always come across all these energy companies like electricity and solar. And it's like, oh, that's, of course, that's a part of energy, but that's not really what I was thinking about. But um, if I look at energy, I see it as kind of like the coding of life. So it's like the container of the instructions of life, so that every movement that happens in life is kind of coded by energy. Energy is what sits behind that movement. So I can see branches move in trees here, but there's energy that I don't necessarily see, but that is causing that movement. Because, you know, for a human being to say I have a heart and a lungs and all those things, but that doesn't make me alive. So energy for me is the literally like the coding or the instructions of life. And therefore it is the underlying, it's what the universe is made out of, and everything, human
it is.
beings and plants and planets and space and everything between is all made out of this same thing called energy. And once we've established that, then we can start to look at how does movement arise in that, and how do different shapes come up? How do we have this? You talked about masculine and feminine. And then it becomes really interesting to talk about this polarity of masculine and feminine, or negative and positive, because then we start to have movement in the energy. So energy is kind of like the life.
Exactly.
It's life.
Mm. I mean, nothing's going to happen if we don't have energy. But
Yeah.
um, I sort of see it in lots and lots of, I guess, different forms, because I see spirit energy and it moves completely different to what physical energy moves. We have conscious energy, which moves completely differently, but we have they have a lot of similarities. And what we need to do is not just, because we're a little bit more used to just physical energy, but it's the other energy that actually moves the physical energy. So when it's like we start with the spirit energy, and it's very subtle, as we've sort of discussed, and then it moves with conscious energy, and we have to move all these different types of energy simultaneously, all at the same time, because if we're just having physical outcomes, then we miss out on, it doesn't get all the underlying importance. It can be easily forced and manipulated from too many different factions that are sitting around us. So when we start to use very subtle energy, we can find, and we can just, it's like toning down your energy. But energy is really all in fields, and all these energy fields we have to sort of learn to diagnose, I guess, which is why we go through a lot of different diagnostics with people on how to tune in, if you like, because we have to tune out, we actually have to tune our bodies in, if you like, to feel or more sense what is really there. And it's a bit hard sometimes explaining to people that, because when you can see energy, you see different types depending on what you're tuning into at the time, or at the moment. Because if I'm helping someone who has different, what would you say? Everything really starts, I guess, in a way with your spirit energy. So that's the one I tune into first. But that energy, when we look at it can sit in large grids right around you, and it has a matrix form. And when we look at that energy, it's very soft, but it's complex. It's actually very complex energy. It's because physical energy is more like blanks, like really like blocks of energy. It's not as
So it's more coarse in a way,
yeah,
but
it
less
is.
subtle.
Yeah, and spirit energy and conscious energy, there's so many different areas in it, and it doesn't allow you to be influenced quite as much. Whereas physical energy, it's just sort of like big blocks of energy, and it depends. All our energy depends on all different parts. You know, we have all these different auras, which people often think of. Your aura is just a real reflection of yourself, but your aura can basically, everyone thinks of your aura as just sitting out here like this great big beautiful big energy, and it just reflects exactly what you are. Well, that's sort of correct, but we have all these auras that when we detune, they actually sit outside ourselves, and it means that you can channel sort of lots of junk, so to speak, or connect to lots of junk more easily when all these personal chakras, or that we have all the way through our whole entire body, because they're like a software. Our chakras are basically like a software. So when we learn how to use, we don't just go by 7 chakras. We go through multiples, and we do all the way from our head all the way through to our toes.
Okay, I want to go back a bit first, because we were on auras and now we're on chakras. And what actually are auras, and what are they for? What do they do at an energetic level?
They're they're basically a magnetics and polarity. Chakras use magnetics and polarities, and they allow us to basically harmonize ourselves nice and easily, but they allow us to use also lots of different energies simultaneously all at one time.
So do
But
the chakras and the auras connect with each other? Are they kind of connected with each other?
yeah, more or less, yeah, because everything.
I mean, you need to unpack this for me.
Everything.
It might be obvious for you, but it's not, I don't think it's obvious for everybody. So I think we really need some beginner kind of, what is an aura? What's it doing? What's a chakra? How come you're saying there are lots of chakras when most people say there are 7? That's a pretty bold statement.
I know it's very, but it is exciting when you find that there aren't just 7 and there's, I don't know how many there are. There's just trillions. They're quantum. We have quantum.
So when you say trillions, like you often say trillions, and I think there must be a reason why you say it. And now you're saying they're quantum. What does that mean? Is that like they're almost like multi-dimensional, so that it's not like just little points on you, but sort of like much more than that?
And we have this multi-dimensional body. I mean, our body is multi-dimensional, and that's what I teach people on, as you know, how to find all these multiple dimensional bodies and just use them all at once, so that we don't miss out on any perspectives that are actually going on in our life. Because otherwise, if we just look at things through a physical perspective, it's just like we're just going through, and it's just like we've got blinkers on, and we don't really see, like, I mean, we don't see with blinkers on, we see with peripheral vision, yeah. And we can, I mean, if we want to, we can focus out really easily and see, like when you go for an eye test, you can see way, if you want to, you can easily see way out on the 180 degrees basically. So your energy can pick up like vast amounts of things that are going on, but physical energy tends to be very very narrow. It's a very narrow perspective that you look through until you start to use all the different other perspectives, and then everything just sort of joins together. So when we use chakras that go all the way from our whole entire body, just think of it as like going to your whatever your IT shop is and buying loads and loads of different software and downloading it, and it basically tells you all different things that are going on that are relevant to you.
So your chakras are they, like people usually talk about them as energy centers? Are they energy centers or are they something else?
I wouldn't call them energy centers, because if you're too centered, like we do have a centrifugal body, but everything moves. It's not like we just have anything going around in our head here. Like sometimes people seem to think that the energy just goes around your head here. It doesn't. It goes fully through the whole entire body. So when our energy just tends to make like little small loops, then that's when we end up having small versions of what's going on, and we just repeat. Because when we listen to somebody else's version of something, it just goes on repeat and repeat. But when we open up these whole full areas, everything sort of goes around, and it just doesn't go up and down our body. It goes right around. It's all around our body, and then it all goes all different ways. And
so all these different chakras are providing different kinds of information to you. It's not probably not just to your body, but really to your whole being. Is that right?
To your whole well-being. Yeah, exactly.
So what kind of information? What does that mean when you talk about information? I'm sorry to keep asking such picky questions, but I know that people want to understand more. They're really curious.
The biggest thing is, as if we only take on a physical dimension, a physical perspective of everything, we focus on whatever the answer is. Okay. So when we focus on just an answer, the answer can come from anywhere. It can come from information from lots of different places, from the outside influences around you, and we don't really know if that's correct or not.
And it can come from memories, it can come from past experience, which might not be
All,
relevant anymore.
But no decision is a decision. And when we're getting all these different informations from absolutely everywhere, it's very easy sometimes even to unconsciously go with somebody else's information and say, oh, well, they're doing that. They probably know better than me. Or we do something that's very similar. We make no decision at all.
Well, I'm going to tell you a little story there. Really interesting example. My sister contacted me yesterday, broken her arm. She was riding. She had somebody teaching her. She was doing a class, and she knew intuitively that the horse didn't really want to do anything, and she knows how to deal with that. But the teacher was saying, no, the horse is just being naughty. And she overrode her own information. She was actually receiving the information, but she just somehow the teacher managed to override that. And so the horse then bucked and she fell and she broke her arm. And she knew afterwards that it didn't need to happen, except that she didn't have that ability. And it's exactly what we're talking about. She actually had the information. The teacher wasn't getting the information. My sister was getting the information, but just not quite strongly enough to make it dominant, so to speak.
That's right. And you're there in the moment. You're the one tuning into the situation, you know?
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing, because when we use just physical energy, it's like, it's sort of forceful. No, just do it. Just do it. But sometimes it's somebody else's will and desire. It's not yours, yeah? And it's not often for your benefit, as your sister found out. But
yes, and we experience, many people will be experiencing things like this every day. So what you're saying is the chakras are part of the mechanism by which we receive that quite rich body of information, which we can read.
There's so many different minds and memory that we have. And like when we go into our legs, we have all this we have cellular memory all the way through our bodies, but the amount of cellular memory we have in our legs is simply crazy. You know, it picks up lots of information, and that's why it's really important to have full chakras all the way right down to your toes, because we are a whole body, you know. And often, well, generally when I start working with people, all their energy's in their head, and their heads are always very, very busy. And that's basically because you've collated all this energy from everybody else, and the energy from everybody else, when you bring in, it's a little bit myopic. It brings it in and it'll focus in one area, yeah? Or not just your head, it can focus in your arms, because when we meet somebody for the first time and we know what they're like, as I've said, we use our whole body. But when we become very physical, we tend to use different senses, and they become very over and high. So, you know, most people are highly sensitive, may not even realize that they basically almost talk with their hands. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't, you know, we all talk with it, not so much talk like this with our hands, but sometimes we do. But what I'm talking about is the amount of senses and the amount of information that you can pull in through the senses in your arms is crazy, because we actually have to detune everybody from being over highly physical in our hands, because we'll just walk around picking up so much information. And I mean, just the sense of touch and that our hands get, and they can, I mean, as soon as you learn to do energy works, what's one of the first things you do? You know, everyone's doing this and feeling all the energy in your hand. In fact, you know, most people can hold your hand up, and if you just do that and don't get too close, you can feel your energy. And I mean, everybody should just try it now. You just put your hand here and you just move like that. I mean, 9 out of 10 people will feel it. But if you go like this, you get nothing.
That's too physical.
It's too physical, and it's too quick. And when we tune in and we just go nice and absolutely so slow, we feel it automatically. And if we go too quick and too close in, you don't feel it. But we all have sweet spots, and everybody's hand is completely different. So sometimes you can feel it more in your left, sometimes more
Yes,
in
I
your
used
right.
to. When I first started, we did it. I started with the Chinese master, and we spent a lot of time just very slowly, and that you instantly feel so much energy there.
Yeah.
Just and anybody can do that as well. You can do that and try those different things. What David just
And
showed you as well.
there's a lot of ethics that go even into that, because I remember a long time ago, my sister and I went to a workshop, and we didn't stay too long. There was too many people there who were just using up their energy unethically. But basically, people were going like this and then getting their energy and then throwing it.
Ooh, I wouldn't have stayed long there either.
No, it's not very conducive to good health or good well-being in anywhere. So yeah.
Can I ask you about meridians? Because that's another thing that we commonly associate with energy, obviously, because of the
Sure.
extensive work by the Chinese on meridians. Do you see meridians, or how do you see that part of it?
It's a bit like being in a whole. My meridians I see as looking in a whole sphere. And then they're also connected to universal energy. So
they're kind of pathways through you,
yeah,
but also that connect out.
they are. And meridians are like everything else. Every single energy perspective that you can ever think of, like chakras, auras, meridians, you name it, grids, energy banks. There's all sorts of weird and wonderful things that we have, and they can all be, as I said, when we have a lot of stress, they split 50-50. So your actual meridians, some that you can have working, which are working quite beautifully, and we've figured out how to do it. But then if we're only using physical, more of a physical based perspective, then there's masses and masses of blocks that are missing, and those blocks of energy will quite often be way out and sitting way out, and they can be, sometimes I've seen them, 300 feet out, 400 feet out from your body, and people are just bringing all those meridians all the ways back in, because when you've had certain trauma, the actual meridians come out, so you still have some base. It's a bit like
so it's like the strands have all got into the wrong place,
yeah,
rather than being orderly.
It's a bit like if you thought about meridians more like a tube, then there would be another tube that would be either in or outside, and it sort of goes way out, and then it sort of splits.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, there's sort of a link there, but it's just almost.
So
like
that's what happens when people get really stressed, is that it splits.
Yeah. But I mean, you can get stressed. I mean, also, our spirit has a lot to do with how our meridians work, because if our spirit isn't very strong, our meridians become very fragmented very quickly.
This feels really important to me. Can we explore that a little bit more?
Yeah, sure.
Because I see that that's a really big problem for a lot of people, is that their spirit isn't strong, and then often they're trying to find healing, for example, or trying to solve problems, but it's like the core of them isn't strong enough to hold everything together, and then it doesn't matter what they do, they just try, but it's really hard to get good results. And we need to strengthen our spirit, because it kind of holds everything else together. It creates a foundation on which everything else can then function and work.
It is so frustrating for me when you've done this work for so many decades, and you know that it's the spirit energy and the spirit and the spirit consciousness, which also has an energy, of course. But when you know that that's the energy that holds, it's the foundation. When it doesn't work, your physical energy is just like, it's so higgly-piggly. It's all over the place, and it has all these great big voids, you know, here, there, and everywhere. It doesn't matter where you look. And
it's almost like there's nothing around which it can all coalesce. Everything coalesces around something.
No. So it doesn't matter, because that's what I find really frustrating with people say, oh, just try and think that like this and try and think like that. Why can't you think like this? And why can't you do that? Or whatever. You got no hope, because there's nothing to, you can try, but you'll go back because your energy's fractured.
Yep.
There's nothing to bloody hold it together.
So how could somebody recognize that their spirit is weak? Apart from what you just described.
It's probably a damn good question, but it is very personal, because we all have certain areas where we're consciously aware that, oh, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that.
So I know exactly that. That's brilliant what you just said. I remember what it felt like. My spirit used to be weak, and at an energetic level, it felt like my energy would collapse on itself. So it felt like I didn't have the power. Like if there was something that was difficult or beyond my capability, I didn't have the spirit to kind of go all the way to find the answers. There was a kind of inner collapse where exactly that. It's like, I didn't believe in myself. I didn't believe that I could do something. I didn't feel the power to do it.
I'll explain one other thing. So when we have physical energy, and I said how we focus on just the answer, it's more, that's the focus. We say, well, but you can pluck an answer out of bloody anywhere, you know. So when we use spirit energy, it's like asking, it's all the questions that your spirit asks, all the questions that your conscious asks, your intuition, your instinct, your soul, your heart, and especially your heart, especially your soul, because that's where a lot of primary things start. And that's why we spend a lot of time actually showing people how to use that spirit. But it means that you process all the energy through your whole entire body. We know it all ends up here, because that's like the final bit of the jigsaw. But you still have, you have all these processes all the way through your body. You have all these senses, you have all these receptors. So when I look at, and we just talked about senses before, how senses can sort of split, and I see them like tubes, and also like they're like meridians, and they all sort of split. So for every sense, we have basically receptors. And think of your receptor as something, probably the best description I can give a receptor for is like a grape. So when we've been overstressed and all our senses are fractured, it's a bit like the grape. All the peel of the grape is sort of pulled back, and layers of it exposed. So they sort of go with the externalized energy, and it sits out here, and it's basically leaving your receptors to be able to sense and feel things that are more about everybody else and not about yourself. So it means that you're highly oversensitive, or you're highly over aware, which sometimes mean that you'll have a great difficulty going somewhere, or certain people's energy you'll find just push you around too much, and it's like, oh, I can't handle it. I can't handle it.
It feels like what you're describing makes people at an energetic level very raw.
Oh, so raw, incredibly raw. And I knew that certain areas in life, I know when, I mean, there's a lot of things. I mean, I was always fairly confident in a lot of areas of life, but there was a lot of areas that I found that I was never really comfortable in. And since that, I know that there's not very many areas in life I'm not really capable at, or I'll give a go at anything. But you know, you become quite apt at, you're not pretending anymore. It's like you're not pretending to do anything. You become more comfortable, and then you're able to find the resources to what is needed. You know,
So that really comes from having a strong spirit.
absolutely.
That's what
Yeah.
gives you that ability to
Strong
find
spirit.
resources that you don't have.
Not just a strong spirit, a strong consciousness, because what we end up doing is we find how to have what I call is a functional consciousness. So as our energy begins, I call it functional energy, and it's a bit like functional medicine and all that sort of stuff. We basically need to start with the basics. You know, we need to have a functional spirit. Everything needs to be functional, basically.
Yeah, why not?
And
Obvious.
then work our ways out. You know, because we start with the very basic. You know, your spirit and your consciousness. So when your spirit begins to be able to work, you are using lots of different types of spirit, and you'll find this greater depth of self. Yeah, because you can ask trillions and trillions of questions in a millisecond, and you get that intuition or instinct and say, yep, that's fine, no, don't worry about that. Because we are learning whether that's for you or it's not for you. It's like, and what isn't for you is just as important as what is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, plus we also have certain demeanors that we are naturally strong in. Yeah.
So we were talking a bit earlier about this masculine and feminine and negative and positive, and they are part of having functional energy.
Absolutely. So when, as I've sort of said a little bit before, our right side is often our most vulnerable side. So for me, my right side is naturally my feminine side, and for you, of course, it's your masculine. But when we're a little bit forced, we bring energy from this side to that side, excuse me, to just more or less say, back off, buddy, that's enough. But certain people are really forceful and just keep coming and coming, and then we really push the energy back, and then they just sort of get back a little bit, or they will overpower you, yeah, if you don't know how to move your energy. So when we learn not to do that, because our right side is often very fractured, yeah, everybody's right side, when I meet them for the first time, our right side is, I mean, for some people who've had incredible abuse starting from when they've been a child all the way through, when I look at them, their right side is hardly even, it's like it's almost painted on, it's hardly even moving, you know.
Yeah.
And then as you start to move it, they start to feel sometimes a little bit sad, because there's all these different areas of their life that they've never been able to venture into, or feel a certain type of love or self-respect, appreciation, gratitude, or compassion for themselves. Yeah. So you don't have this thankfulness for yourself, or because you can't, because there's basically no energy there to collate all these different questions that you're asking. And so you pull answers in and it doesn't even relate to you, or it's a bit like someone's telling you, well, if you had this, you'd feel more fulfilled in your life. You know, if we follow all the advertising on life, you know, you see the advertising for a brand new whatever car is or whatever, and they're all having a great time. Yay, if I have this car, mate, I'm going to be so happy. And you buy it and you think, well, that didn't last very long, did it? But it's the same, you know, it's why advertising works so damn easily. It's like because when all these little factions have all gone out, we're trying to get whole again. Yeah. And we're trying to find the joy of life. And we're trying to find what is going to feel fulfilling. But in the end, we've all got all these damn big voids that our energy system is just picking up and just saying, oh, no, it's not enough. I need more. I need more. I need more. because you aren't getting that more information about yourself. But once you get that, you become incredibly quiet in yourself, and you just aren't pushed around, are you? I mean, it's
No,
just,
it's very different.
it's
So a
strange.
functional, somebody who's got functional energy, they've got the masculine and the feminine energy is circulating evenly. They've
Yep.
got positive. So positive and negative are really interesting, because in the West we always make positive good and negative bad. And
Yeah,
then
and it's
what
so
I
wrong.
see with people, they want to have more and more positive energy and less negative energy, and their life actually gets worse and worse when they do that.
It does.
What's the story there?
Well, that's where we go to neutral negative, neutral positive. And it basically creates like a magnetics and a polarity. So what is needed, you hold on to, and what isn't needed, you automatically soon recognize. It means that we aren't asking for certain things to come in all the time, which aren't needed. Yeah. But we are asking for certain things that are needed. So it's often why a lot of things, when I just think about, oh yeah, I need to do this, I need to go do that, and you find what is more needed. And usually when I find I don't need something in my life, or I've changed perspective, I don't need it anymore, you can sell it pretty quick. I thought about selling my boat, and honestly, it was 10 minutes. It was 10 minutes from the time I put the ad on, and I thought someone was joking. But no, I sold the boat in 10 minutes. I mean, bang. I didn't buy a new one in 10 minutes because I hadn't found it, but it was pretty funny. All of a sudden I found the one I needed, and bang. But you sort of,
So,
I looked
so,
at
so
quite a
what is
few.
the functional positive and the functional negative? What is that? Like, what's
Well,
we know what
the
forced
biggest,
negative is and
okay,
forced
we'll think
positive.
about it in, let's go to conscious terms. So we all have an everyday consciousness, yeah? But we also have a subconscious and, of course, many layers of deeper conscious. So as we detune, we turn off lots and lots of different types of consciousness, which means we don't know, really. There's certain parts of us just don't know. We aren't confident in that area. But once we start to use all different types of spirit and consciousness, it's like collating so much information. So it's a bit like when you meditate. And as soon as we meditate and we're going in, we make sure we're going in because we've grounded and we've learned how to hold our energy in, which is why I've said, in one of the last videos, we'd learn how to ground. And we bring all our energy in, yeah? And we're grounding and we're going through our whole entire energy system and our consciousness. And it's like all of a sudden, usually when you're meditating, we doesn't take very long, and we sort of go into a little bit of sometimes strange light and strange world, and sometimes we're not even sure what it is. Yeah. But when we start to use functional energy and functional consciousness, everything is moving. Yeah. Which means that we can go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. So it's like tripling your where you can go in a meditation. But when we're in a meditation, it's like, I hope I got some good stuff. And when I come back, sometimes you sort of have an intuition or instinct of what you should do or what you don't do. Yeah. But in everyday life, if we have a problem, we can't say, hang on, guys, hold the meeting. I'll be back in 2 hours. I've got to go and meditate. I'll be back. Life isn't like that, is it? We've got to make a decision right there in the end. Otherwise, it's like, oh, God, I wish I'd said this. I wish I'd done that. So instead of the I wish, and I could have had that, wish I'd had that information a long time ago, it's basically like because you're going through all these different areas of conscious and your everyday conscious, basically, it's like bringing out all this subconscious, which has been sort of pushed down deep inside, and you bring it out, and it's like everyday consciousness now. So you've just redeveloped your whole consciousness, and everything is starting to move, which means that you have accessibility to so much more of what is actually going on in your life. Yeah. So instead of, got no idea, or sometimes we do need more information. Yeah. Let's face it. Sometimes we need more information, and sometimes, or it just tells you where to find that information. We can't know absolutely everything, but as we start to use our consciousness so different, all of it, you know, yes, no, or you see a problem completely differently because your perspective is so very vast. Yeah. Because your energy is picking up all this vastness.
So what I'm hearing, in fact, throughout this whole conversation is that how much energy is related to information, not information like in a newspaper, but information that we use throughout our being, throughout our own personal energy field, in order to function in life. And that ties in with the functional, everything functional. But it's just, there's so much information available, and a well-functioning human being has access to lots of really relevant and important information, and the ability to filter out the unimportant information. And it's things like our chakras and our auras are all a part of that system of accessing and filtering information in order for us to be able to live a functional life. Is that a kind of summary?
And it's also healthy, because without that, we almost don't have a form and a function, if you like, that is purposeful. So it means that our body isn't working, so it doesn't have a correct form. And if we don't have a correct form, then we can't find the correct functionality and functionability for what we're meant to be doing, which means it's, what's the purpose? Why am I here? I don't even feel like I fit in.
Yeah. And you know, it's really interesting. My teacher always used to say that you can have peace when you can solve your problems. And very often it looks like people are being taught to try to have peace in the middle of their problems without learning how to solve them. And through energy, you can, like you were talking about selling your boat or whatever, that's just a problem in a way that needs to be solved. We can do so much, and we can experience a very different kind of rather pragmatic or functional peace, I would say, if you have all this information, these information systems working, because your life actually works better. And so it's not just about having to have peace, whatever is going on, crazy stuff, but it's actually also having the inner knowing that you can solve anything because you have these systems working well.
There's a very important point to that. That's like a really important piece in that pie. When we have when we get stressed, or when we're trying to find, we have questions put at us, and then it's like, well, I can't find an answer, and then we shut down. So instead of having all these multiple different types of shutdowns where we feel like we're stalemated, we find a part that is functioning.
Yes, like if I can't go there, I can go there, or I can go there, or I can go there.
We find some part that's working, and then once we find that one part that's working, then we find how to use another part that's working, and then it's like you find different ways to get everything back working again. And as it becomes more functional, we see things with greater, as I said, greater perspective. So it's like when we have a physical perspective, it's just like this, and that's the perspective. And that's something I saw, which was quite crazy when I was doing a job that I used to do way before I took this on full time. And I'd go to a job and everybody'd be scratching their heads. And I said, well, what about if we just do that over there, and then that'll be fine? And it's like you see things that are sort of out of the blue over there. If we fix that, well, that fixes that, and it's all done.
And so often the problems are the solutions are so much simpler than what people are thinking. But you need this kind of information to be able to see the simplicity.
And the other thing is, like, sometimes there's a problem, and I think this is something that's really large in everybody's life. It's like, we could call it confrontation. Like, I've never been afraid to talk, but I noticed even for myself, when I stopped using my energy properly, and it was something I did because it's a bit like, imagine you're at the deli bar, yeah, and someone's going to give you all the crappy bits of bacon or ham or whatever, and you think, oh, I hope he doesn't give me that. And so what do? They give you the crap, and you don't even speak up.
Yep.
So instead of that, you say, excuse me, no, I'd rather those ones over there. I said, I'm not paying for those. I need those ones there. So you get what you need, yeah? But all you had to do was open your mouth. It's not like you're being unpragmatic or you're being an arsehole or whatever. It's just saying, no, that's not what I want, and that's what I'm paying for. I need that.
And you can do that because you're getting the right information, your energy's functioning well. I keep coming back to this same thing because I think that if we can really clearly understand that that's fundamentally what energy is at a human level, then it puts everything together.
And another good version of that is like, when people are being totally unpragmatic and say, well, it's like when you're being an arsehole, I'm not going to really do it. I mean, if you're just understanding and we all work together, we can achieve something, you know. But, you know, it's just, it doesn't mean you have to go, rah, rah, rah. Well, you got to do it. It's just finding it more of a, you're not afraid to speak up. You know, it's, you know,
that's been a huge change. That's been a huge change in me. It's taken a long time to learn that. I used to be very afraid of saying anything that somebody else might not like. But gradually I've found that shifted because it's really important to be able to kind of hold my own energy without disrespecting the other person, not by putting somebody else down, but also not by putting myself down.
It's only a matter of asking sometimes. It's like, I can't believe how many places, and I was working, like all the bosses are saying, I'll get Dave to ask him, can they do that? Because he doesn't mind doing that. And it was never a problem. It's not like I'm coming out and I'm jumping down their throat. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Blah, blah, blah. I just say, look, this is going on. Can we do it this or whatever? And it was just like, I mean, I used to joke to the bosses sometimes, you know, and I used to make up a good story. And I said, I didn't need to do that. I said, why can't you just ask people?
Yeah, that's very interesting. I've definitely found that also. I'm happy to have that conversation now and just say it straight. Like, let's just be straightforward about this. We're human beings. We're all functioning together. Let's just find a way to make it work.
It just makes life easier, because the other thing is, once we start to use neutral energy, your energy isn't confrontational.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just like the person knows you're not being unreasonable, you're just asking, and then it's like, oh, okay, that's all right, you know, okay.
Well, you're also giving them their energy, their responsibility. You're not trying to take over their energy or control their energy.
No, you're not.
You let them have the full responsibility for themselves, and you have full responsibility for yourself. And we have a much better functioning world when our energy functions like that. Exactly. So I think we can sum this session up. This fundamentally about energy. We've been kind of all over the place. There's probably a lot more that we could talk about. But if we can get this picture about having functional energy and how powerful that is and how helpful it is in life, then we know why energy is important. And from there, we can start to make much better decisions.
Exactly. So, you know, it is about decision making, you know, it's about life. It's just about life, you know?
Yep.
It is.
Great. Well, thank you very much, David. And let's see what comes up next.
Thanks for the next subject.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.